Well, hello and welcome back to Supposedly Fun. My name is Greg, and I am here today to react to the shortlist, the finalists for the National Book Award for Fiction 2021. This is a prize that I know there aren't a whole lot of other booktubers that follow, other than maybe one, but it's a prize that I have followed a lot since I started working at Borders a long time ago and was working as a bookseller, especially in the New York City area. People were actually interested in the National Book Award, so I started to follow it, and I've never really given up. So it is a book award that I am very interested in. They have a bunch of different categories, including nonfiction, poetry, translated literature, young people's literature. I am only going to focus on the fiction finalists, at least in this video. I don't think I have too much of an opinion about the other categories. Fiction is really my area of expertise, so we are going to stick with that. I will put a link to my long list reaction where I did predictions for what I thought would make the finalists in the description box down below. I'll also put a link to my winner reaction from last year down below, because why not? And it is somewhat relevant because Charles Yu, who was the winner for last year for his book Interior Chinatown, is on the board for this year's prize, which is kind of interesting. So let's start with the finalists, really quickly rattle them off. The 5 books that made the final cut for the National Book Award for Fiction 2021 are Cloud Cuckoo Land by Anthony Doerr, The Matrix by Lauren Groff, Zorrie by Laird Hunt, which I just happened to get from the library, so I have a copy right here, The Prophets by Robert Jones Jr., and Hell of a Book by Jason Mott. Now, we'll get to those 5 books in a minute. Let's start with a quick bit of respect, pour one out for the books that did not make the final cut. They are Abundance by Jakob Guanzon, The Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois, Intimacies by Katie Kitamura, The Souvenir Museum, and Bewilderment by Richard Powers. Now, if you paid attention to that list, you know there are some shocking developments here. I really thought Bewilderment by Richard Powers was going to make the finalists. In my prediction, I mentioned that I personally wasn't too excited to see it make the finalists, but I included it in my prediction because I really thought it was going to make it, especially, after last year when Shuggie Bain, which turned out to be the Booker Prize winner, was on the finalists for the National Book Award. I really thought there was going to be a bit of a repeat there. Maybe I just led myself astray. Maybe the National Book Award jury didn't want to have a repeat of last year where one of their finalists was also a finalist for the Booker Prize. Maybe they just didn't want somebody stealing their own thunder. I don't know. But for whatever reason, they did not go with Bewilderment as one of the finalists, and color me surprised. I'm also really surprised that The Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois did not make the shortlist. That is a book I've been hearing a lot of really great things about. It is very new. It's very timely because it was just recently released. It was blessed by Oprah, as was Bewilderment, actually, by Richard Powers. So they passed on 2 Oprah books. Do you think there's a connection? I don't know. Now that I'm saying it out loud, it kind of sounds like there might be. Maybe the National Book Award just has it out for Oprah Book Club selections. I don't know. I'm just putting it out there into the world. You decide for yourself. So I think not including both of those books seems like a big shock to me. If one of them had made it, I feel like I would be less surprised. But the fact that both of them didn't make it, they both felt like really big heavy hitters. So I'm surprised. And I know I've already said I'm surprised, but I'm surprised. The book that I am the saddest to say goodbye to is Abundance by Jakob Guanzon, because that was one of my most anticipated reads of 2021. It is one of the books that I am trying to get to this month in October, and we'll see if I actually get to it. But I was really excited to hear people talking about it because it felt like I was the only person who ever mentioned that book at all this year. And it was nice to have somebody else putting it in the spotlight, and maybe more people would discover it. And that would have been nice. Hopefully people will discover it from the fact that it was on the long list. I haven't read it yet, so I can't ultimately speak to the quality of the book, but it sounds fascinating to me. And I know the National Book Award does like to discover new authors and kind of put their stamp on authors that are a little bit less known. So it felt like that would have been a good book to do that. They chose a different one instead. And again, we'll get to the actual finalists in a little bit. And then I'm not all that surprised the Souvenir Museum, which is a story collection by Elizabeth McKracken, did not make the finalists. I feel like short story collections have a really hard time of it with awards because generally it seems like people will be really down on a story collection if there's a story that's a little bit weaker than the others. They feel like each story has to be perfect, and it sets the bar really high for a story collection to win a major award. And I think that's a bit of a shame because I like story collections, and I have not read anything by Elizabeth McKracken, but I have heard good things about her work. I'm a little more surprised that Intimacies by Katie Kitamura did not make it. I did not put it on my list of predictions, so I guess I'm really not that surprised in the end. But that's another one I've heard really good things about. I think it just speaks to the quality of the long list that there are some heartbreaking losses that we have to say goodbye to now as we head into the finalists, because, and even the finalists are really interesting books. So let's start talking about them. The first finalist is Cloud Cuckoo Land by Anthony Doerr. I've talked about how I was a big fan of All the Light You Cannot See by Anthony Doerr, which won him a Pulitzer Prize. And it was a little surprising to me because there are things that he does in that book that I usually do not like in fiction. And yet he made it work for me. The premise of Cloud Cuckoo Land sounds a little odd to me. And I used to be all about books that were really odd and quirky and things like that. So I feel like if this was published in 2004, I would be all over it. But it is not. So I'm a little hesitant. But what I've been hearing about it so far is really positive. It just published here in the United States. And so far, I haven't heard too much that's negative. So I had said that I was going to really wait and see what the reaction was to see if it changes my mind. My mind is starting to change a little bit. I might seek this book out, but I'm not in any rush to do it either. So we'll kind of see what happens. If you are unfamiliar with Cloud Cuckoo Land, by the way, let's do a quick rundown of the plot. And I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm just going to say that there are 3 different storylines in 3 extremely different times. And actually, I'm not going to use the blurb at all because I feel like just doing one section of the blurb won't cover what the book encompasses inside of it. It does deal with young people in a war, how kind of similar to All the Light We Cannot See, but it does it with a lot more scope. And I believe there is a story called Cloud Cuckoo Land that is sort of a through line, almost Cloud Atlas-esque, which I have not read. And that is Cloud Cuckoo Land. And I've heard a lot of really good things about it, but if you have read it and if you have thoughts, I would love to hear what you have to say about Cloud Cuckoo Land in the description box down below. I've also heard really great things about The Shell Seeker. I think it's The Shell Seeker, not The Shell Collector. Could be The Shell Collector, which is a collection of short stories by Anthony Doerr, but I have not read anything of his other than his Pulitzer Prize winning novel. That takes us to Matrix by Lauren Groff. She is very famous for having written Fates and Furies, which was everywhere the year that it was published. It was one of Barack Obama's favorite reads of the year and just a whole lot of other things. It stayed on bestseller lists for a very long time, and I have heard a lot about it in the years since. Some of it positive, some of it negative. It does feel like reaction to that book has been a little bit mixed. I was wildly excited to read Fates and Furies when it was released, and I never got around to it. And now that time has passed, part of me wonders, and I've allowed the fact that some of the reactions are mixed to keep me away from it a little bit, but I do still very much want to read it. Matrix sounds like a very big departure from Fates and Furies, which is the story of a marriage, but it's told through 2 very different point of views, one of which reveals things about that change your perspective on the first half of the book, from what I've heard. I haven't read it, but that's what I've heard. Matrix sounds like it's a very different type of book and a very different animal. So, Cast Out of the Royal Court by Eleanor of Aquitaine, deemed too coarse and rough-hewn for marriage or courtly life, 17-year-old Marie de France is sent to England to be the new prioress of an impoverished abbey, its nuns on the brink of starvation and beset by disease. At first taken aback by the severity of her new life, Marie finds focus and love in collective life with her singular and mercurial sisters. In this crucible, Marie steadily supplants her desire for family, for her homeland, for the passions of her youth, with something new to her: devotion to her sisters, and a conviction in her own divine visions. Marie, born the last in a long line of women warriors and crusaders, is determined to chart a bold new course for the women she now leads and protects. But in a world that is shifting and corroding in frightening ways, one that can never reconcile itself with her existence, will the sheer force of Marie's vision be bulwark enough? I've heard really great things about this. This is another one that was only recently published, and I've heard a lot of really rapturous response to it. Haven't heard that much negative about it, so I feel like this probably has a good shot at the win. But we'll find out, because we have to wait until November 17th to find out who the ultimate winner of the National Book Award for Fiction will be. However, I am really interested in this. I kind of held off to see what people were going to say because I haven't read anything of hers yet, and the plotline does sound... Historical fiction is something I kind of like to get feedback on first, and the feedback has been very positive so far. So I am interested in seeking out a copy of Matrix at some point, hopefully soon. And that takes us to Zorrie by Laird Hunt. And the fact that I got this from the library tells you that I was very interested in it. I had not heard about this book until the long list was announced, but I have read a previous book of Laird Hunt's, which was In the House in the Dark of the Woods, which was a really sort of creepy vibe book that was perfect for October. So I don't think this has the same kind of creepy vibe, but it is October, and because I had such a good October reading experience with Laird Hunt before, I went to the library and put a hold on a copy, and it was immediately available. So I picked it up, and here it is. And it is only small. I think it's about 160 pages. Yes, it is about 160 pages. So this should be a very fast read. And what's interesting is when you look at the plot description, it sounds like a lot happens. The same could be said of In the House in the Dark of the Woods. So I really trust Laird Hunt to do it. His work seems to skew a little bit more genre-esque, and usually the National Book Award likes to throw a genre book in there, but it doesn't make the finalist list. And I think the fact that this one did speaks to the fact that maybe he is an author who plays with genre, but this one seems to be much less genre than some of his other works. I'm going to read the description from the National Book Foundation's website. As a girl, Zorrie Underwood's modest and hardscrabble home county was the only constant in her young life. After losing both her parents to diphtheria, Zorrie moved in with her aunt, whose own death orphaned Zorrie all over again, casting her off into the perilous realities and sublime landscapes of rural Depression-era Indiana. Drifting west, Zorrie survived on odd jobs, sleeping in barns and under the stars, before finding a position at a radium processing plant. At the end of the day, the girls at the factory glowed from the radioactive material. But when Indiana calls Zorrie home, she finally finds the love and community that have eluded her in the small town of Hillsburg. And yet, even as she tries to build a new life, Zorrie discovers that her trials have only begun. Again, for only 160 pages, that sounds like a lot to cover, but I trust that Laird Hunt can do it, and I'm really interested in reading it, and this is one of the things that I'm going to be trying to get to in October. It is actually going to be my next book, because I finished the other physical book that I was reading last night, and this will be my next one, and it should go fast. Like I said, it's only small. So we'll see how quickly I can get through it. The next one is the only book from the finalists that I have read. It is The Prophets by Robert Jones Jr., and it is one of my favorite reads of 2021 so far. I think it's a beautiful book. I think it could be a wonderful winner. I feel like Lauren Groff has a very good shot with Bewilderment and the love songs of W.E.B. Du Bois out of the way. This is the one that I would like to see win, because I really love this book, and I feel like it's flown under the radar a lot this year, and I am very happy to see it standing out and getting some attention from an awards body, and I feel like it's a book that I would like more people to discover, because I really liked it a lot. It is about two enslaved men who are in love on a plantation, and during the lead up to the Civil War. It's not the Civil War yet, I don't believe. And the story actually shifts among the members of the community of people living on the plantation. And it really shows ways in which white culture has been forced on people and changed their understandings and their beliefs and their values, and the ways in which it others people. And I thought that was really interesting. And it does a lot of really subtle movements. Robert Jones Jr. has said that his inspirations for this were James Baldwin and Toni Morrison. And I think there's more Toni Morrison in this than James Baldwin, But I think both of those really bear out, and I am very excited to see where his career goes. I think this would be a fantastic candidate for the win. It would definitely hold up as one of the great National Book Award winners in the fiction category. You can probably, I'll talk about what my prediction at the end, but I think you can probably already guess. And the final book is Jason Mott's Hell of a Book. Now, I had mentioned that the National Book Award frequently likes to sort of plant its flag on sort of undiscovered authors or lesser known authors, and I had been kind of hoping that Abundance by Jakob Guanzon would be the one that they went with this year. They went with Hell of a Book by Jason Mott instead. However, there has been a lot of feedback about this book in comments since I talked about the long list, and the feedback has been very positive. So I guess it's not all that surprising that this is the one that made it onto the finalist, and it has made me more interested in reading it. Let's take a quick look at what the plot is. In Jason Mott's Hell of a Book, a Black author sets out on a cross-country publicity tour to promote his best-selling novel. That storyline drives Hell of a Book and is the scaffolding of something much larger and urgent. Since Mott's novel also tells the story of Soot, a young black boy living in a rural town in the recent past, and the Kid, a possibly imaginary child who appears to the author on his tour. As these characters' stories build and converge, they astonish. For while his heartbreaking and magical book entertains and is at once about family, love of parents and children, art, and money, it's about the nation's reckoning with a tragic police shooting playing over and over again on the news, and with what it can mean to be black in America. And that certainly does sound like a very poignant book, a very timely book. Unfortunately, as much as it sounds like a very timely book, it also sounds like a very familiar story, something that James Baldwin himself was writing about back in the day. So that lends a sense of urgency to what the book is about and what it is covering, and that could mean that this has a shot at being a sort of upset winner, or maybe like a dark horse candidate, however you want to phrase it. It does seem like there's potential for this one to come from behind and steal the spotlight from its more known colleagues in the finalists. So in terms of predictions, like I said, I think you have to give favorite status to Lauren Groff right now. Anthony Doerr, a lot of people seem to be liking that book so far. I haven't heard too much negative about it, but it does seem like a sort of quirky genre book, and the National Book Award is certainly the awards body that would pay attention to that, but it does make it have a little bit of a steeper road. Anthony Doerr is an author who has already won major literary prizes. I don't think Lauren Groff has, not to my knowledge. So I feel like she edges Anthony Doerr out in that respect. Laird Hunt, I haven't read the book yet, but it almost feels like one of those situations where the prize is the fact that he made the finalists in the first place. And I know that sounds a little bit harsh, but life is real. I feel like the strongest competition for Lauren Groff is probably The Prophets. This is something that I think squarely fits in the National Book Award Foundation's wheelhouse. It is a really great quality book. They love to champion lesser known authors. This was his debut, and it's a fantastic debut, and I really look forward to what his career has in store. So those are the ones that I think have the best shot, but I would not at all be surprised if Hell of a Book comes flying in there and steals it out from everybody. But I'm going to say my prediction is The Prophets. I'm going to stick with that. It's where my heart is right now. It's the only one that I've read, but it is one of my favorite reads of the year so far. But I would love to hear what you would like to see win the National Book Award for Fiction 2021, what you think will win, because sometimes they're not the same. So let me know in the comment section down below what you would like to see win and what you think will win. And let me know what you think about the books that did not make the finalists, anything you think was overlooked. And if there's any title from the finalists that you would have liked to swap out, let me know that as well, all in the comment section down below. As always, I really appreciate your time and the energy that you spend watching this and leaving comments and all of that stuff. Thank you, thank you, thank you for that. I will be back. Until next time, happy reading.